Welcome to In the Know. We are back after who knows how many weeks, and who knows how many weeks till you see us again. So you better cherish this episode. It'll be one of a kind. We're here to talk about the Pelicans, of course, their trials and tribulations in the in-season tournament, how they fared, and just kind of general team building stuff that we love to talk about endlessly. Mason, what's up with you? How have you been? How's life treating you?
Good man. It's getting a little chilly up here as to be expected. I'm excited. I'm coming down to New Orleans for the kind of Christmas New Year's week, or like 22nd through 28th, something like that. So we'll be down there for a week and bringing our daughter down. My parents have met her before, but the first time she's going to be down in New Orleans. So we're excited for that.
Is this her first flight?
Second.
Second
We
flight.
were very smart. We had a group of friends get together on for the 4th of July in Austin, Texas. So we all enjoyed 105-degree heat together. But that was our first flight. So this will be number two.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, no. Well, I'm glad you're coming back down to New Orleans. It's probably a good escape from the old Michigan weather.
Oh yeah.
Um that is
Uh,
this time of
and
year.
and
But
you,
I guess enough.
obviously, I don't know. You had some news recently.
Yeah, yeah, just I broke my leg for listeners who are unaware recently playing frisbee. I went up for a catch, came down on it pretty awkwardly. It was a complete like hyperextension, and when it happened, I thought I like blew out my knee, honestly, because that's where all the pain was uh located. We got imaging, and they did the physical exam, and in the physical exam they were like, no, we think you avoided your ACL, but we're concerned it might be your meniscus. And I was like, oh, I know a couple Pelicans players have gone through something similar. And so they got the MRI, and the MRI revealed, fortunately, like it wasn't a meniscus or any kind of ligament stuff. I mean, I have like grade one like MCL and like LCL sprains, but those don't require any kind of surgery or anything. Those will just, heal over time. But I do have a broken leg. There is a fracture. And so right now the prescription is just to be off of that leg for 4 to 6 weeks as it heals, and so that's going to be a bummer. But no
Sacrificing
surgery.
yourself to save the Pelicans. I'm convinced that's what happened. So
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Pelicans Nation thanks you for your service.
I don't think I'm doing enough. Looks like.
Yeah.
What do they need? Another arm? But
Oh boy,
yeah,
here
no,
we go.
I'm happy it turned out the way it turned out, because I was like prepping myself for something that needed surgery and extended recovery, where uh, I'll gladly take the non-operative version of events. Even the doctors were like a little bit surprised, because this type of injury frequently requires surgery, whether it's to fix the bone or it causes other tears. And they're like, "You got pretty lucky," and I was like, "Oh, thank you." I'm glad I did. But yes, I have a broken leg, and the I don't have a smooth transition from that to the Pelicans, but they played in the in-season tournament recently, and it was a fun journey, I would say. The whole process was interesting. I think the league has done a good job with this. Obviously, there are areas that they feel like they can probably improve upon going forward, but for its inaugural iteration, the group play system was fun. It was exciting. The Pelicans had to watch the Rockets lose in order to qualify, which I think started the bit of excitement. Oh, okay, the Rockets lost. We've made it out of group stage. Now everybody's made $50,000, right? That's super important. Like, that's cool. Like, hey, the Rockets lost. We made $50,000, and then going into I guess even before that, watching the next game play out, the Sacramento and the Golden State game, watching it for both point differential and outcome, and it was an
A
insane game
crazy
with
game.
Malik Monk hitting a wonderful shot at the end to secure the Kings a victory, which also secured them a hosting spot in the play-in. So the Pelicans had to travel there in Sacramento. So let's talk about the Sacramento game a little bit. The Pelicans had a really good night, good performances from up and down the roster, led by Brandon Ingram.
Yeah. I mean, the it was I mean the the difference between that game and then the one that followed was wild. And look, I mean, I don't think it's a secret at this point. The Pelicans match up pretty nicely with Sacramento, and so I'm not. I wasn't, super confident they were going to win. I mean, it's a game in Sacramento. It's a road game against a good team, so you can't really be confident you're going to win. It's kind of a coin flip. And the Pelicans came out. It was peak Brandon Ingram. I mean, he was distributing. He was taking quality looks. For the most part, he was getting to the rim. He was facilitating for others. I mean, it was everything you want to see out of a star player. And even on a night where Zion didn't do too much, the rest of the roster came through. I mean, Trey Murphy came out guns blazing and contributed nicely as well. I mean, they just got contributions up and down the roster. And so, I mean, there's not a ton of resistance when you're talking about the Kings defensively. But they went, shot for shot, and they overcame a slow start and got a really nice win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the way, as you mentioned, the way Brandon Ingram played was extremely impressive. He got to the free throw line 9 times. He shot 6 threes, hitting 3 of them. 2 of them he hit were pull up threes coming off of Zion screens, which is, I think, an important little development in action. If they can do that at a pretty high frequency, it'll change how teams defend them, right? If that is a shot that Brandon Ingram can I don't want to use the word perfect, but excel at, uh, that will change the geometry of the court because Zion, you can have Zion set a screen for Brandon at any point at any time, right? And if you are now able to set those up 30 feet from the basket, uh, and teams have to respect Brandon Ingram's shot, then it changes Zion's ability to get to the paint because Brandon is so tall that he can pass over defenses. He can pass over double teams, and use his length to kind of find Zion in situations where he might be playing, they might be playing 4-on-3 in those situations. And Zion being the decision maker and also going downhill. And you can also kind of imagine spacing out the floor, right? CJ in one corner, Trey in the other corner, like all that kind of pick your poison defense becomes super, super deadly. Um, I think they should continue to develop that moving forward. Brandon should continue to develop that moving forward. And then the extra, the classic mid ranges that he hit were like a cherry on top of like a very, very, very nice set, right? And I think that's kind of been the argument from a lot of people is that you're capable of hitting these tough shots, just don't make it your primary, right? Make it the thing that sets you over the top. Make it the thing that truly makes you unguardable. So, yeah, props to Brandon Ingram who played, I think, one of the most complete games he has in a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'd be remiss not to mention, not, I mean, Herb Jones. Like, I don't know. I feel like you legitimately cannot say enough about the way his offensive game has expanded this year, as well, as far as ways to contribute without being really a plus shooter. I mean, he's not doing materially better from 3-point range than he has in years past. And well, that's kind of a bummer, and there's not a ton of optimism there to say he's ever going to become that kind of plus shooter at this point. He's he's doing all the smart things, and it's not just that he's a lockdown defender anymore. Like he can be a good offensive player with the right supporting cast around him, and he's not a guy that you're just going to be able to just leave because he's gonna make defenses pay and find the holes and really I've been very impressed with him, the way he's grown offensively. That what I've seen this season.
Yeah, he's taking the coverage as a sign of disrespect. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna leave me? Are you sure you want to do that?" And then he's pressing the issue. And it's not just that, I think there was times last season, maybe even like early on in the beginning of this season, where it was this pressure of like, I need to get threes up, right? Like, I need to space the floor for those other guys. I need to get threes up. Trey's not available. Someone's got to shoot threes. And I think the worst games like Herb would have were the ones where he was primarily just spacing out to the corner or spacing out to the wing, and 5 of his 8 shots would be threes. And you're like, okay, like that is not Herb Jones. And Herb, I think, is finding the balance between taking the open shot versus putting his, I think, very good ball handling skills and slashing skills to use and attacking the basket, playmaking while going downhill, getting to the free throw line. Like he's making the game easier for himself and for others. Um, he is really, really growing into a player that knows when to attack, right? When to push on that gas pedal. And so, you know, I don't think you're gonna get all the games where he scores 23 points and has 5 assists and you know plays like lockdown defense, but it's certainly like, you know, there are players in this league where you can give them a ton of usage because you don't want the stars to have a ton of usage, and you're like, I'm just gonna live with the outcome here. And I think Herb Jones is becoming one of those players you cannot live with the outcome. He will accept that usage, not shy away from that usage. He will embrace it, and then he will throw it in your face. And then you'll have, you know, your coach like Mike Brown speaking about like, oh, Herb Jones scores 23 points.
Yeah. So I mean, look, really fun game. And I want to, because I feel like the rest of this podcast is going to be a little doom and gloom. I do want to, mention like that's peak Pelicans basketball. I mean, I think, well, especially as Trey Murphy gets, his minutes restriction lifted and starts to have a more regular role. That's the type of team we want to see. And they're doing all the right things. And I mean, and then, you hope you get the Zion of old to add to that, because he really wasn't. I'm not saying not gonna say he was a non-factor, but I mean, he because when he's on the floor, he's going to take defensive attention, right? I mean, like you need to know where Zion is at all times. So even when he's not scoring, he's got attention. It's going to help the other guys on the floor. But he didn't score, so he didn't score that much. He really didn't do anything but be a decoy, essentially. And you would think that you can add, if you can add him actually creating advantages in getting 20-25 plus. I mean, that's a Pelicans team is going to be really hard to beat.
Yeah, and everyone feeds off of that. So I think that's a really good time to kind of talk about the Lakers game, right? So the Pelicans advanced, they made it to Vegas. Everyone got a minimum $100,000. You know, really good success story. And I think talking about the Kings game prior to this, like kind of puts into perspective. Like at the end of the day, these are regular season games, and yes, it was a bad loss. Yes, there was a lot of eyes on them, but like there is still room and runway to correct things and still improve upon. Right? There's still a lot of good that's occurred this season that they can build upon. So with that out of the way, they were fucking terrible against the Lakers, right? From the get-go, you could tell that the Lakers, particularly LeBron, came in with a certain mindset, came in with a desire to kill, and LeBron executed on that desire. And as the game progressed, the Pelicans kind of looked a little bit shell-shocked. Like they looked like the stage was too big, the lights were too bright. Particularly Zion, right? Like Zion, I think there's a lot of attention being drawn to his conditioning and his lack of effort, which I think is fair. I think all of that conversation is fair. Shaq and Chuck, JJ, all of those guys have spoken on it in a very eloquent way, but in a way where they're hopeful that he grasps the picture and turns it around. I think that's all fair. I think that doesn't account for what I saw to be someone that looked out of their depth. Like beyond the conditioning issues, like, going 1 for 6 from the free throw line, I think is an indicator of something up here where it seemed he was unprepared for that level of competitiveness, that level, whatever it is, that moment when the lights were the brightest, the moments that he said he lives for whatever reason, he seemed out of his element. Did you come away with that kind of an impression?
Yes, I think some of the events of the game, I'm not going to put as much on the free throw shooting, because honestly, he's been pretty awful free throw at the line all season. I mean, he's never been a great free throw shooter, but I feel like he's been not. I routinely check this because the Pelicans' leading free throw shooters in their starting lineup have been like Jonas and Herb Jones, which is absolutely ass backwards from what you would expect beyond Zion. But I do think he got rattled very easily. I feel like the two charges in particular LeBron James took, he was already playing kind of tentative. That just shut him down. I felt like, because he probably just said, I can't attack here. And especially if LeBron James is sitting there waiting, he's going to outsmart me, is essentially kind of what I felt like I saw Zion resign to. And so you saw him attacking when it wasn't LeBron there, right? I mean, but when LeBron was there to defend him, he felt like he just played like a guy who knew he was already beat. And that can't be Zion's mentality. He is a force. Even with the conditioning concerns that are, I think you put it very well. A bunch of people have commented on it very eloquently. He still made plays last night when you saw the burst, you saw the quickness, and so he has to play with that confidence all the time. And then if he's got to take a play or two off because he doesn't feel like because he needs to catch his breath, you as long as you're getting the peak level of Zion for the plays where he is giving his all, no one can stop that. So that's why it was so disappointing.
Yeah, it was. I think there was something he said in the post game press conference. Most of the post game press conference, I don't think the reporters got anything out of it, which is I think pretty standard after a loss. When you talk to him after a loss, you're not going to get many details or insight from him. But there was one final question where they asked him, because I kept saying I need to be more aggressive, I need to be more aggressive, and someone just kind of followed it up. I forget who the reporter was, but they asked him, what do you mean by that? Basically, essentially, they were just like, "Well, would you be more aggressive?" And he started talking about like hunting for more shots. But what he said was, "I sometimes obsess over trying to find the best possible shot when I'm out there." And he's like, "I just got to get over that. I just got to get out of that mentality of like, hey, like that's not the case. Sometimes my team needs me to do me right." And I think that was kind of a little bit that was insightful on his part, but also the kind of the difference where like the Lakers, like Cam Reddish and Rui Hachimura and all those guys, we're feeding off of what LeBron was doing, right? You're watching LeBron go crazy and do all of these things. You're gonna be excited. You're gonna want to match that level of energy, right? The Pelicans are looking at their best player who brought nothing. And it's so hard to match that level of energy. And I think Zion kind of realizes it. Hey, I need to be the one that sets the tone.
Yeah, and when you set the tone, you get the additional defensive attention because I don't really think as when LeBron's out there guarding Zion, I don't think the Lakers felt compelled to throw a second defender at him or anything like that. And so when you can defend Zion one on one, it makes it really hard to start getting others involved and having others feed off you because there aren't the passing lanes there aren't the open looks that you're creating because you're not being assertive and forcing that second man to come in or even just someone looking out the corner of their eye on the weak side say all right Zion can get to the rim in a second. I've got to be aware of that. I didn't see that. I mean, again, when LeBron was off the floor, there was certainly like Jackson Hayes is not going to stop Zion, right? But other than that,
Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh, let's hold on, hold on. I want to talk about that for a second. Jackson Hayes is not going to stop Zion. There was a distinct moment. Zion had Jackson Hayes matched up with him. He was in the paint. Couldn't even did not I don't say couldn't because he's more than capable
didn't
of doing it.
yes.
Did not even attempt to try to seal Jackson Hayes off. Allow Jackson Hayes to push him off. I mean, it was like the laziest, like hey, pass me the ball, please. And it's just like where that was just disappointing, man. It was just like just the level of nonchalantness of like, oh yeah, I'm out here, playing basketball. It's like, what?
Yeah. Did
Jackson Hayes.
you? Yeah. There was one of your tweets today. There was a reply to it that had a video of Zion's first preseason game, the one against Atlanta. I don't know if you happen to see it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I saw it and I remember it because I was there. I was happened to be in Atlanta at the same time and was covering the game. And I mean, I remember that play. It was like a minute into the game, and it was just like, wow, like this guy is really on our team. And I don't know where that guy's gone. Like you don't even have to go back to Duke videos. You can look at early Pelicans videos too to see how explosive Zion was, and it's just something's just not there right now.
Let me take you further in that year after the meniscus injury, after the fact that
The
it took them
bursts,
longer than what's up.
the bursts, the bursts of
Yeah, the
his
burst minutes after the
yeah.
burst minutes, his first matchup against the Lakers on the road. Right, he matched up with the Lakers on the road. He had 35 points, I think, that night. Um, from that game, there was an assistant coach told me at that game, his rookie year, Zion had done a couple of things. He came, and I think Kuzma was still on that team. This was like when he was just like destroying Kuzma in his matchups, right? Um, assistant coach told me like Zion's like checked out after like I don't know, I forgot what quarter it was, but he checked out, sat down on the bench, and he said, "These motherfuckers scared of me. Like they don't want to guard me." And it's just like when I heard that from the assistant relaying me that, I was like, "Holy shit! Like this guy is on. Like he wants to go out there and kill people." And I think that Zion doesn't exist right now. and he's got to find a way to find that Zion. The conditioning stuff, yes. I mean, like, look, that is a separate conversation for me, right? Like, I think it's a thing that needs to happen. It's a thing that's entirely within his control. I tweeted about it today, right? He has the capacity over the next 2 months to get in excellent shape. That is entirely within his control. Like almost every able-bodied human has that capacity to transform your body and transform your fitness over the next 2 months. Almost every able-bodied, and him as a professional athlete has more resources, more ability to do that than the vast majority of the human population, right? He has that, but that hunger, that desire, that certain like fuck you, right? Like I don't know if that's within his control to come back. And I think, there is probably some part of Zion through his whole journey, where over the repeated injuries, like again, I'm doing very armchair psychoanalyzing, so it's kind of irresponsible of me, but it's like, has he lost that kind of competitive edge and confidence because he's lost faith in his body over the years? Like I don't know. Like that's a question I'm asking very open endedly.
Yeah. I mean, so I was listening to the conversation about Zion they had on the Bill Simmons podcast this morning. Not a frequent listener to that one, but when I heard they talked about Zion, I was like preparing myself for the worst, right? And I thought most of it was actually pretty fair. And the one thing that Simmons said was that the second jump is gone, and it's like, yeah, I I I knew it, but I just hadn't thought about it in that way because we talked so much about like what in a couple of years ago about that second jump for Zion and how he's just a menace on the offensive glass and no one can stop that. And it's like, yeah, it just doesn't happen anymore. And I don't know if that's effort. I don't know if that's conditioning. I don't know what it is because he wasn't in A+ shape his early in his Pelicans career either. I mean, this has been a conversation for years, and so he was that guy even when he wasn't, even when he was carrying more weight than he probably should have. And so I don't know how to place it, but I mean there are certain parts of his game that just like that really truly separated himself from others that I like you said I haven't really seen this year.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is moving forward. Just but again, I think you got to control the controllables, and right now the controllables is his own personal fitness. Like I think he is currently too big, and I want to be super mindful here. I am not saying he's fat, and by the average human standards, he's absolutely not fat. Like I want to be I I want to be very clear. He may even be 91% muscle. Like I don't care, right? But it's too big. Whatever that number is, whatever that body fat ratio is largely unimportant. It just needs to come down, right? It just needs to be a little bit smaller until some of that burst, some of that second jump, some of that athleticism starts coming back, right? There is an equilibrium here, right? I think a large part of him believes that he has seen so much success because of his success. So like why slim down? And I think that's absolutely fair argument, but there's an equilibrium here where you can be big and strong without being bulky and slow, without it preventing you doing the things that you're known to be able to do and excelling at, and hindering your game on a game to game basis, right? Like he's still off of pure talent. Like, he went 11 for 12 against the Sixers. Like he just kind of ran through them. Nothing he could do. He took over the Knicks games. There's nothing they could do. Like he could still do that stuff, but maybe some of that stuff becomes more commonplace if he's a little smaller. And I don't know what that target weight is. I'm not his doctor. I don't have access to his medicals in any capacity, but like him and his team need to determine whatever that weight is, try to hit it at some point this season, and see if that changes his games. Because I think personally, like it's not the same for everyone, but for me, I get a lot of confidence out of like visual feedback of things that I'm accomplishing, right? And I get that visual feedback from working really, really hard. Like if I spend a lot of time in the gym and then I go try to PR and I lift something really, really heavy, I'm getting immediate visual feedback. I just accomplished this task, right? And that gives me confidence. Oh, I just did that. I trust my work, and therefore I feel confident. if he's able to string together a bunch of good games, and be on the level that he's capable of being at a smaller size, perhaps it'll bring back some of that desire, some of that confidence. Again, I'm psychoanalyzing here in a way that is probably irresponsible, but I don't know. I can only guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part that resonated most with me was the equilibrium comment you mentioned. Like, he doesn't play soccer and he doesn't play football. I mean, basketball sits somewhere in between, right? And so even I think that hopefully he understands there are giving up a little bit on the size and strength if it increases his speed, which is like already that first step is unparalleled for somebody in his position with where with his size. There's opportunity there, and so I think also I would expect, and this kind of ties to Christian Clark's articles from today. I'll bet you the Pelicans know what they want him to be for that exact, to achieve that equilibrium. Like that's what the med staff and the training
It's
staff, that's what they're
written
paid.
in his
Yeah,
contract.
that's what they're paid for. And
The
so
target weight plus body fat percentage, that specific language, weight plus body fat percentage, is written in his contract.
yeah, but and that, to be fair, I mean that came when with some there's been a turnover, right, with the training staff, and since that contract was written. And but even so, like there's certainly a number, even if it's not exactly the one that's in this contract, there is a number that the staff has been paid to figure out, and for whatever reason he's not getting there. And so
The other thing is, and it's
yeah.
something every single adult finds out, the equilibrium shifts. If the equilibrium is absolutely not what it was when you were 19, right? Like it changes and you
Yeah.
have to adjust accordingly, right? It is very possible the equilibrium has swung from, like, maybe when he was at Duke, he was able to be, I'm just making up numbers here, right? Because he was listed at 285 at Duke. Maybe at Duke, he was listed at 285 and he was able to be that and be dominant and be explosive and fast. Maybe now that number is closer to 265, right? Like, I don't know. I'm making up numbers, but
Yeah.
it shifts, and that requires some acknowledgement as well. And we all go through that process, and it sucks.
Yeah, for sure, especially when you have a kid.
Zabad.
um, but anyway, anything else you want to hit on from the Lakers game? We've obviously, I think the Zion point we've beaten up, but
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple of things, right?
yeah,
I think even when Zion's healthy, there's a couple of issues with regards to how the Lakers chose to defend him.
yeah,
Every single moment where Zion was not involved in the play or off the ball, LeBron was playing flow free safety. They ignored him completely off the ball to the point where no one else could really get going. There was always a wall. And they did the same thing with, like, JV, right? Anytime JV was not involved in play, AD was in the paint, right? They had very clearly game planned around the Pelicans' non-shooting threats. And at any point they were just in non-vulnerable positions, they would help off of them in a way. So I think Zion's off-ball utility has to be more if they are guarding them like that, right? I think there needs to be more offensive rebounds. I think he needs to be involved with screening actions away from the play with shooters specifically. You can't help off Zion like that if he sends screens for CJ on the other side, right? I think there needs to be a concerted effort to not clog up the paint when Zion's off the ball. Two, I do wonder if it raises the question, and it's something that we've all been asking the last couple of years: is the best version of this team Zion on the ball the vast majority of the time? Because you mitigate the issue of him being off the ball, you put a very good, put the ball in the hands of a very, very good advantage creator, and everyone else kind of spaces them. So I don't know, and I think those are difficult questions to answer. But right now, I do think, like, trending back towards that, like, in shape type of Zion that can move around and be more active fixes some of those problems. It's just that, like, off ball, something's got to give. Something has to give, and the team has to be smarter at scheming around Zion off ball possessions. And I think, right, some of it is difficult to scheme around if he's just is loafing into the play, if he's taking a very long time to get into the play or not sprinting to set a screen and that kind of stuff. Some of that stuff is not on the staff; it's on him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's to be. I would argue that being active without the ball on offense is harder than playing active defense because I think and with Zion, that if that's the first place you go to catch your breath is when I don't have the ball on offense, then the Lakers can do exactly what the fuck they did last night. And so I also found it, depressing slash hilarious that it seemed like the Pelicans' answer to that defense coming out of the first half or coming out of halftime was Jonas camping out in the corner and chucking threes. Like that, that's what they did. I mean,
That was last
Jonas
year really
took
green to me. I was like, I've seen this move before.
like that was Jonas took 2 threes within the first 2 minutes of the third quarter, and like they weren't like I think one was wide open, but the other one kind of wasn't, and it was just kind of like we've got to establish Jonas as a spacer. It's like it's not gonna work.
No,
But I
that's a
mean
win
like
condition for them, right? They're not going to change
yeah
how they guard you. What they are changing is who gets to shoot the ball,
yeah
and that's a win
yeah
condition for the Lakers. Unless he's
yeah
going bananas like he does like once every
with
82
against
games,
the Clippers, yeah, blowing
it's
a light
not
team.
it's difficult. So yeah, I think the staff needs some adjustment there. Um, I thought that as much talk there was about Zion, I don't think any of the other so-called stars played well either. I think they played pretty horribly, if you ask me.
Jose and Herb played well. No one else did. I mean, I think you can pretty much you roll it up to that.
Yeah. Oh nope. Dyson was a +2 in 16 minutes in a 40
All
point
right.
loss.
All right. Anyone who got most of their minutes in the fourth quarter, I'm kind of ruling out here. But
No, because all those fourth quarter guys are negatives as well.
great,
Put some
great.
respect on Dyson's name.
All right,
He was
all
the
right.
only positive on the team.
I mean, to bring it back to the Simmons podcast, so they were saying really nice things about the Pelicans roster. They said like this is a good team. Like they mentioned Dyson, they mentioned a bunch of the guys, Trey, and it's just the frustrating thing comes down to Zion. And it kind of ties to what I saw your tweet today about like one thing about your favorite team that surprised you, whatever, or that you got or you've gotten wrong or something. It's basically just like, yeah, if Zion is not the top 15 guy that he was when healthy in previous years, then nothing applies about what we thought about this season, right?
Yeah, look, if Zion's not a top 15 guy, then it doesn't matter what happens to the Larry Nance minutes, right? It doesn't matter what happens to the
No.
JV minutes and if you upgrade on center or not. If it does none of this stuff that we argue about on a daily basis on Twitter, it doesn't matter because the fact is if he's not a top 15 guy, they're not going to be a good team. And you can say, well, oh, what about Brandon? Like, what if he's yeah, same thing. That's kind of the issue here, right? He's not a top 15 guy, which is like one of those guys needs to be in that tier. And so far, only Zion has shown the ability to do it. You want to get mad at me for making that statement? Go right ahead. But right now, neither of those guys, I would say, are top 30 players, right? I think the thing is, there has been an influx of so much talent in this league right now that, like, even if you remain the same in production wise, you are going to get passed up because someone has gotten better. The league has gotten better. The just the landscape has changed. And so like look, those guys are both very very good players on in any given night they're capable of being the best player on the court, right? They're both of them are capable of doing that.
Yep.
They need to do it consistently. That
Yeah.
is the ask, right? They need to play that way for an extended stretch and in games that matter. And I think, they're from that perspective, they haven't done that. And I think here's a can of worms that I want to open up for you. Christian put out the article today of Zion not listening to them regarding his diet and conditioning and et cetera, right? If that is Zion, if that is just who he is, what point do you pull the plug?
It's a catch 22 because if you're thinking about pulling the plug, then what are you getting for him in a trade? I guess there's
Does
probably a
it
team out
matter? Like,
there
that's my thing. Is like that's the kind of that goes back to like what the like we did through like the Eric Gordon situation, right? Like,
like just hit
oh
the reset. Is that what?
yeah, like
Yeah.
well, it was Eric Gordon, like he's a max contract. Oh well, he's not healthy right now. Oh well, he's playing right now, so I don't know if we can. Let's do
I'm
that.
so angry you just compared Eric Gordon to Zion. Like
It's
I
bad,
just
but that's what this is. That's what this is. So I think at some level, it's like yeah, maybe he turns into that guy, but like what is the probability of that happening for
yeah,
you and
but
your
Eric Gordon
organization?
was never going to be had never at any point showed he was going to be a top
No,
15
but
player.
Dell the
Never.
reason Dell didn't move him because Dell couldn't accept the sunk cost.
That okay, that part is fair, but yeah. So I guess
It
I'm
was this
wondering.
perpetual cycle of like, oh well, he's gonna have more value in the future. Oh well, he's kind of playing well. We kind of need him right now. So it was like, you
Oh, he's
know,
hurt again. Shit.
yeah. So it was just like, what do you do? I think completely unsourced. I think if the right deal was available at the deadline, the Pels would pull the trigger.
So you're saying like in 2 months, not previously, like
Correct. In 2 months, I think they would have done it this summer had like the Scoot stuff made sense, right? Like had that deal, like forget about how Scoot is playing right now. Just that pick for Scoot plus other assets had they all made sense because my understanding was at that time if they were able to get like for example like from Charlotte if they were able to get that pick and Mark Williams and some other stuff if they were able to get Shaden Sharp from Portland if they were able to get a bounty of things, they would have done the deal. And uh I think if you were willing to cross that bridge then you are willing to cross that bridge again at a certain point and it's possible that your priors have updated, right? And so I think there is a world where you hit the deadline and you see a deal happen and it might be a deal where you're just like fuck, what are they just moving for?
yeah. See the reason this is hard for me is not sunk cost as much as it is the ability for New Orleans to land a player with the upside that Zion has. But at some point,
Yeah.
you were right to bring up, is that upside ever going to be achieved? Because right now we have a ton of data points to suggest that, either A, it would look like it could, and then he got hurt, or B, he just doesn't want to put in the work to get there. And so if that's the case, then yeah, like I see a world where they move him and just go a different direction because this ties back to other things that we've been talking about for a while, which is how hard it is to build a team around Zion because he is a hyper efficient scoring four who doesn't rebound, who isn't defensive rebound, doesn't offensive rebound either right now, but he's never defensive rebounded, and he can't be a rim protector, and he doesn't shoot. And so it creates this environment where if you go big, teams can just collapse the floor on you defensively. If you go small, you can't stop anyone. You can't protect the rim. And so there has to be like the perfect front court pairing for him to even start to build a team that you feel like can win anything of consequence. And so if Zion isn't that good, if he's not that top 15, top 10 guy, it's almost like he's creating more problems than he's solving in terms of roster building. Not him individually, but in terms of roster building.
Absolutely. If only someone wrote an article on the Substack about how stars are supposed to solve problems, not create them. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's some seems like a conversation that's been had before regarding certain players on the Pelicans. But
It's Groundhog Day, man.
I think just like the one thing I want to push back on like the team building aspect of it is like I think like the way I would build around him is not build around him as if he was a four. I would build around him as if he was like he is Russell Westbrook. He is De'Aaron Fox. He is a guard who is going to take a lot of possessions on ball, and everyone else, like someone else has to go play the floor, right? Someone else has to go do those things. It's still like a difficult ask, right? Like I think it's not easy because someone else has to defend guards, and you have to put Zion on somebody to defend, right?
And yeah,
And
you
and
fill
and
that four spot and the five spot with shooters, at least one shooter, right? So
but yeah, so what needs to happen in my opinion is exactly that. Is like you need to like just maximize the number of shooting players around the Pelicans and in Zion and also put the ball in his hands more. And it's just that like how can you go all in on a guy that is not all in on himself, as JJ said. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's such a weird proposition.
Especially when you're
I don't.
making so many sacrifices to build around him the right way. And sacrifice is probably the wrong word, but it's a unique you need a unique set of players, I think, to maximize Zion. And so it is like, it is kind of sacrificing in a way.
I I'll throw out some destinations for you. Right now, I think his value is pretty low league wide. I don't think he would return like what Donovan Mitchell returned. Right. I don't think he would return what Rudy Gobert returned. I'll throw out some destinations for you, and you tell me which ones make sense for you, and what you would think you could get from those destinations. I think the top destination I have is Houston.
Okay. Um, I'm Şengün is probably your target there, right?
God,
Or
I would
Jabari
love that.
Smith.
I think
uh,
if they went to Houston this summer, they could have had that lotto pick for plus two of Green, Smith, Şengün. Sorry, let me walk that back. I think they could have had two of the four things there: the lotto pick, Green, Smith, Şengün. I'm not sure you.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like you would be, well, I don't know. Like, so the thing is, I feel like Houston, those guys like Jabari Smith or Sengun, like they're both interesting pairings for Zion, like with Zion, not trading for
Yeah,
Zion. Um,
I think Houston probably tells you no on Şengün.
like straight up.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the conversation could
it's
be
kind of
completely
Jokic light.
different. I mean, I think the conversation could be completely different in 2 months. I think if you call him today, they tell you no. Right, in 2 months, I think Zion, like that one thing I want to like, I keep want to go back to, like Zion and the Pelicans can change the conversation in just 2 months, right? If over the next 2 months, they play what 30 games in the next 2 months, they go 20-10 over those games, or even if they go like like 17 and 13, like that's still a pretty good record. But and Zion's putting up with an efficient 26 a night, that changes the narrative, right? Right now, the narrative is, oh, they came off a big loss, blah, 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 blah. But like, I think that kind of like ignores the good that's happened this season. And over the next 2 months, they are entirely capable of being good. Trey is back, CJ is back, right? Like, we're gonna get Matt Ryan back, the plus minus god. But like those are things where in 2 months, all of a sudden, if the Pelicans have gone 20-10 over the next 30 games and you're at the trade deadline, yeah, Zion looks way different as a trade target than he does today, right? And I think then you can go to Houston and be like, yeah, give me Şengün and give me Armin Thompson.
But to be just just to be super negative here for a second, how in your mind, how much of that could possibly be fool's gold, where they blitz, they play small, they blitz mediocre teams or bad defensive teams with small lineups, and ultimately you don't fix anything that the Lakers caused. Like any like the way that the Lakers were able to defend the Pelicans, you could argue that that's not, they don't have to change anything. Like you play the Lakers again in 2 months. Let's say that we're after the traded line, you play the Lakers again, and the exact same shit happens because the how the Pelicans can play certain defenses of certain teams hasn't materially changed. It's just they've taken advantage of certain situations, and they're gonna, like, the Pelicans team is currently constructed. Even if Zion is only 5%, 10% better than he is right now, he could still beat the shit out of teams the way with how the way
Yeah,
he's
look,
shown he
look.
can.
Well, I think there's two answers to your question. Though answer number one is that's exactly why you move him at the deadline.
Yeah.
You think it's fool's gold, and you take advantage of the fact that you have been good and he has been good, and this is the best it's going to get, and you move him, right. That's answer number one. I think there are people in the Pelicans front office that would not mind that outcome. I'm just going to put that out there. I think they would not mind that outcome. I think the number two would be is if you do end up talking yourself into this and selling yourself into this version of the Pelicans, then you specifically make buying moves at the deadline that change that, right? That change how they're going to defend. And you do things like start Trey Murphy. Like That is a thing that's going to have to happen, right? So those are areas where they can change up things. And in addition to, kind of like game planning around the Lakers specifically, I don't think every single team can play Zion the way the Lakers played him, right? Like I think
Sure.
teams can attempt to, but like they don't have a LeBron and an AD. They don't. Same thing like where I think like Memphis can do some things with Jaren Jackson that others can't in this West. Like the Kings, they sold out on Zion and he was still efficient, but he still carved them up from this passing game, right? Like he probably could have asserted himself. There was absolutely no need to. The Pels were in control the whole time, outside like the first quarter, right? They were in control the whole time. He had no need to. So I think in the West, there's not many teams that can play him like that. And you would have to game plan specifically and trust your game planning to like, match up against the Lakers. But you would make moves at the deadline that brought in more shooting and brought in more versatility that answered some of those questions. Like, cool, like that's just not like we're gonna bury the Lakers from deep. Maybe that's what we're gonna do. Maybe we're just gonna put Zion on the ball and screen with a million shooters every single time. That's just what we're gonna do. So like I think those are your two answers there. But that's why I think the next 2 months are so important. Is for him to make it to the trade deadline healthy, so they can properly evaluate if they want to be buyers, or B, if this is when they're pulling the cord, right? Deploying the shoot, then it's so much better than if he's just A, like hurt, or B, not good. Where I think he's probably gonna be good by then, right? Like I think he's been decent. He hasn't been bad. He just hasn't been a top 15 player. Like I would say he's had more good nights than the type of nights that he's had last night, like, or against the Lakers. So it's just one of those things where I think I'm personally at the point as like, I'm a big believer in like stars. You need a top 15 guy. Zion's your only guy. He's on his rookie deal. The cap's aligning, blah, 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 blah. Like logically, I've always been on that train. I think I'm at the point where if the right deal was available in February, I would pull the trigger. But I would want the star, not a star. Star's a not guaranteed thing. I would want the big of the future or the guard of the future in that deal somehow, some way, right? I mentioned Houston. Obviously, I would want to get Sengun. I think that would be my number one target there. You're going to get a lot of the same kind of like questions as you get with Zion with regards to like fit and defense and that kind of stuff. But that guy plays center, right? So like he actually rebounds the ball. He actually like tries. He's it's a little bit of a different positional fit. And yes, he's going to get pick and roll to death, but like, can you game plan around that better than you can game plan around Zion? I don't know. I mean, that's what you got your perimeter defenders for. The other team I would look at is Detroit. Desperate team. You maybe get to cover Zion in person. And Detroit's a weird one for me because I don't think they would trade Cade.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But if there was something around Cade, I think you kind of have to listen. Not that I think that Cade's a good player. I just think like, again, you speak of a talent that might reach all NBA potential. I think that valuation on Cade is rapidly closing. But Detroit's just the most garbage roster I've ever seen. I mean, like, come on, their roster's terrible. And then Monty's, I think, quiet quitting while he's out there. But anyways, it's bad. If you can get Cade, I think that changes the equation a little bit.
You get Cade and surround him with CJ and Trey Murphy. Yeah, I mean that
And Cade and BI are the Spider-Man meme, right? Like you look at their shot profile, you look at their like the time of possession on the ball, like that kind of stuff. BI's just better right now. BI's just a better shot maker. I think it'd be interesting because Cade defends. That's one thing Cade defends. He tries on defense. He's a good passer. And I think he's a willing 3-point shooter. So I think on the Pelicans, he would have catch and shoot opportunities.
Yep.
And trading Zion for anybody already increases your 3-point rate. It just happens. Your 3-point rate's getting higher. Unless, of course, like, would you do something around like if Jalen Duren was the centerpiece, like how much more would you need? Would you need Ivy back? Would you need Asar Thompson back? Would you, at what point the Pistons saying, all right, this is too much for us, like if it was just like Duren, Bogdanovich, and a pick or two.
No. I can't get there with them. I mean, I'm much more intrigued by the Houston potential offer than anything in Detroit. I feel like I can't properly evaluate anyone over there just because of how awful they've been. And like even with their like they're doing such weird stuff with the bigs over there too. Like I feel like Dorenzi, he's getting like there's some nights he's just not playing or not playing as much as he should be. And so I don't know. Houston or Detroit as a trade destination just it worries me.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That'd be so weird, dude, to trade Cade for Zion for them. They just go to negative shooting at that point. I don't think they would do it. That's why you're like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm not sure because I don't think they loved the idea of drafting Cade at that time. I think their GMs really
What
thought
would
hard
you
about that one.
what would you trade for Cade if it wasn't Zion? Like to put Cade on this team?
Not much. I mean, I would do CJ in a pick.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that'd be kind of fun.
they're not pulling the plug that quickly, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be kind of fun. You get an adult for Monty over there.
How how many picks would you need to do? This is more about the contract situation than anything else, but BI for Cade plus. How much plus do you need when you consider the horizon where what we're coming the path we're coming down with BI's next contract? I mean, like I think
I
all
don't
these questions
think
have to be
people are
asked.
gonna like my answer. I don't know, man. It's difficult for me because like Cade has not been good or efficient. Bi has been good, but is Bi $250 million
Right.
good compared
That's the
to?
right.
I think what Cade is extension eligible this summer. Him and Trey were the same draft class. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Him and Trey were the same draft class.
You bring up a good point, but his extension also is daunting potentially compared to what he's producing.
Maybe, but like I would take a 25% max over a 30.
Yeah, those are two different quality players, but yeah.
I guess, but I think you can. I think there's a world where you can get Cade sub max. I think that changes things if he's not tied to a percent of the cap. Like if you trade for Cade this summer and then you offer him something less than the max, he probably doesn't take it, right? He probably doesn't take it. He probably just waits.
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Cade's a weird player. I believe in him so much. He's just been not good. So like, I just I'm letting my personal bias of him color what has happened, which is he's a below 50% true shooting player with one of the highest turnover rates. Loves his little midi. Just I don't know. Bi's just better. I don't know. I don't know if I could do that.
No, of
Bi's
course,
just better.
yeah, of course he is. Yeah, that was never the question to me. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. I think the plus would have to. I would have to know like what else I'm doing with the plus. Like, oh, you're getting you're getting those picks and stuff. Like, what else are you gonna go get? Like that fits. Because I don't think Caden makes the Pelicans better. It just he mitigates the
yeah,
contract concerns.
yeah, I'm with you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we've
Fun times. Oh,
sufficiently.
destinations. We're still talking destinations. I think the two
Oh
other.
yeah,
I
okay.
can't really think of any other Western Conference destinations other than or than Houston. In the East, I think the Wizards would be interested. I don't think they have anything I want particularly. Just a disappointing collection of recent draft picks. Bilal's kind of cool, but he's like Herb Jones, so it's like Herb is great, but like how many Herbs can you have on the roster? And he's not as good as Herb yet. Um, Corey Kispert, a good shooter, but like, what's he doing for the Wizards?
You want to put Kuz and Bi back together?
They hate each other, man. No, that Kuzma's been good this year.
I
Kuzma's
know.
actually been, I mean, for as good as it can be, like for the Wizards, right? So the Wizards, I don't know, the Wizards are out for me. Charlotte, I don't know if Charlotte would be interested in him, and what they would be willing to give up, but I don't think they're giving up Brandon Miller. Uh, And so Atlanta, right? But Atlanta's out of picks because of the DeJounte Murray trade. So it's just like, what does Atlanta have that makes sense? So it's just like a lot of weird things. And I think Houston and Detroit kind of like make the most sense from a young player slash pick standpoint. But if it doesn't work out, you have to revisit the idea during draft time where like where the picks are landing and you have a better idea of where this draft class is headed as a collective.
Yeah. Well, like you said, hopefully this is not a conversation we're having in 2 months. Hopefully the narrative has turned. But
Yes, hopefully the conversation is strictly about on-court things that are happening because the Pelicans are playing good. Which, by the way, like, is 2 months when the next episode is going to be?
yeah, right. I wanted to say that I know you and I talked about this briefly before we started recording, but so Zach Lowe wrote his weekly article, came out with it today, and he didn't have much bad to say about the Pelicans, and I obviously mentioned the fact they got waxed by the Lakers last night, but he it was he framed it as a positive, and I feel like it's important to keep that perspective, given how negative we have been about the past 24 hours and just kind of Zion this season in general. But like, he positioned the Pelicans making the Final Four of the play-in as a step for this team. I mean, and I think it is fair to say that whether you think the season tournament matters or is totally meaningless. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about that, but it is a step for this team given how unsuccessful they've been. He did mention that Zion hasn't hasn't played the playoff or won a playoff game, and so like I do want to say that that we want an improvement from what we saw last year. We're getting it, not in all the ways we hoped we were getting it, and the season is still young. There's a lot more basketball to be played, and so while there's still all these very fair concerns about what the ultimate ceiling of this team is as currently constructed, we do owe it a little more time, especially with all the guys on the floor. I mean, finally, we've got players healthy. Like you said, Trey Murphy's coming back. They've got CJBI and Zion playing, even if they're not all playing as well as we had hoped. So let's see how it goes, right? I mean, we may end up exactly where you and I have talked about in this podcast, with this team, but let's give them more time. Now that they're all playing together, let's give them a month, give them a few weeks, and let's see where we are.
Yeah, I think we did it. I think we did a pretty good job on this podcast, kind of like level setting that, behind all the doomer stuff, right? I think it's like we both acknowledge in 2 months the conversation could be completely different.
Yep.
Like literally, like I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they could be number one in the West in 2 months, and they'd be like, oh shit, like what's going on, right? A 6-game win streak changes everything, or so it's just like a 6-game losing streak would like have us right back here. Like, okay, when are they pulling the plug? Who are we firing? So yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of good that's happened this season, more good than bad, I would say. And I hope it continues to trend in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. Not going to let the last game. It provided a good reason for us to hop back on the mic and chat. And we should start finding opportunities where the Pelicans are doing good things to jump and just fucking celebrate, because there have been great times. Like even that Kings game was awesome. It was like all the great things happening with the team, and there have been I mean, the fact they won their group, they beat the Clippers on the road. I mean, they won some games that I don't think people expect them to win. And so look, there's been some really good stuff that's happened this year, and hopefully we see some more of it.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Thanks for hopping back on with me.
Yeah.
Best of luck
Good.
with Sophie, and hope you have safe travels here in a week or a couple weeks or so.
Yeah, heal up. Hopefully your timetable for recovery is faster than half the Pelicans roster. But just
I looked up NBA players who've had this injury. There's been quite a few, Kobe being the most famous of them, but most recently Poku had this injury. And you see the average, shout out Jeff Stotts. Just Stotts has everything. Of course, I had to go look it up. Average NBA player comes back in 10 weeks. Poku most recently came back in 12. So that's my benchmark. 10 to 12 weeks of
cool.
Let me do it. Let me get back at it.
I like it. Awesome. All right, man. Well, yeah. Thanks for listening, y'all. Hopefully, I don't know if enjoyed's the right word given the subject matter of a lot of this, but thanks for sticking with us.
No, they enjoyed it because this is a special podcast that they don't get very often.
Fair enough. I'll take that.